A policeman ate lunch with a homeless black woman every day, and one day something shocking happened. Officer Brandon patrolled the streets of Riverton with a genuine sense of duty. He believed that wearing the badge meant more than just enforcing laws. It also meant caring for the community in small, everyday ways. Folks around the district knew him for his friendly greetings and calm presence. Every lunch break, Brandon would grab a quick sandwich or a warm meal from a nearby cafe, then find a place to sit down and eat quietly. One afternoon, as he strolled past the local bus station, he noticed a woman, her skin dark with dust and sun, her clothes worn, sitting on a short stone wall. She looked tired, but she greeted him with a gentle smile. On instinct, Brandon offered to share his lunch with her. The woman, who introduced herself as Cora, politely declined at first, wary of pity, yet Brandon insisted, assuring her he simply didn't like eating alone. That day they ate together in silence, broken only by a few polite questions. Cora revealed she slept in shelters whenever she could find a space, or under the old highway bridge if not. Brandon was struck by her humility, and by how neatly she sat, as if she was used to tidiness despite having lost so much. Before Brandon left, he mentioned he'd be back around the same time the next day, and would be happy to share lunch again. Cora smiled softly, nodding in thanks. Over the next few weeks, their lunchtime ritual continued. People would pass by, some staring, others ignoring them, but Brandon and Cora talked comfortably, forging a gentle friendship. They discovered small details about each other. Brandon had joined the force years ago, motivated by a desire to help at-risk teens. Cora once worked in a restaurant kitchen until a series of misfortunes left her jobless. With no family nearby, she ended up on the streets. It was during one of these lunches that something shocking emerged. Brandon rummaging in his bag for a newspaper article he thought she might find interesting. Noticed she never actually read it. She only pretended to scan the words. Sensing her unease, he gently asked if everything was all right. Embarrassed, Cora admitted she could only read a few basic words. She dropped out of school at a young age to care for her grandmother and had never developed solid reading skills. She confessed it limited her job opportunities and kept her isolated. Rather than judge her, Brandon felt compassion. He promised he would help however he could. That promise quickly grew into a kind of mission. Brandon began carrying an extra book in his patrol bag. After their lunches, they would sit on a quiet bench or near the bus station, practicing reading simple sentences. Over time, he brought children's storybooks, short articles, and easy grammar lessons. When people recognized Brandon in uniform tutoring a homeless woman, the reactions were mixed. Some admired him, others thought he was wasting time or just putting on a show. Brandon paid no mind. Cora's progress became his priority. Within a few months, Cora's confidence soared. Though she still lacked stable housing, she now believed that the future could be different. When she proudly read a whole paragraph for the first time without stammering, Brandon cheered louder than he'd ever had at any sports game. Word spread around the community about the officer helping the homeless woman learn to read. A local journalist ran a short piece in the paper. Donations trickled in, enough to buy Cora a few warm outfits, a sturdy sleeping bag, and more books. Some people reached out with part-time job leads. Yet not everyone was supportive. A handful of skeptics accused Brandon of using Cora's story for attention. They wrote letters to his precinct demanding that an officer's job was to patrol, not sit around reading with a vagrant. But Brandon stood firm. His supervisor, hearing the full story, defended him. Officer Brandon's actions reflect this department's values of community and service, the supervisor insisted. Encouraged, Brandon and Cora pressed on, determined to change one life at a time, starting with hers. With her newly learned reading skills, Cora began applying for positions that previously felt out of reach. She eventually landed an interview at a small diner that needed someone to assist with kitchen prep and simple paperwork. Brandon and a volunteer from a local shelter helped her fill out the application and picked out presentable clothes. Nervous but hopeful, Cora showed up at the diner, prepared to show them what she could do. The day after her interview, Brandon found Cora at their usual lunch spot. She was grinning ear to ear, tears streaming down her cheeks. She told him she'd been hired. They sat side by side, hardly touching their food, celebrating quietly. As the day wore on, both realized how far they'd come together. Months before, they were little more than strangers sharing lunch. Now they were friends, bonded by mutual respect and kindness. News of Cora's progress continued to spread. A few more charitable souls offered help with her housing situation. Before long, she secured a small room above a corner grocery store. Nothing fancy, but a private place to sleep for the first time in years. In that moment, she realized how her entire path had changed because one police officer chose not to walk by her, but instead to sit down and share lunch every day. When their city council heard of Cora's journey, they honored Brandon for extraordinary community service. The ceremony was a modest affair, just an acknowledgment at a council meeting, but it meant the world to both of them. Brandon humbly thanked Cora in his acceptance speech. He insisted that her determination, especially learning to read against all odds, was the real highlight. The crowd gave them a standing ovation. Life wasn't magically perfect afterward. Cora still worked hard shifts at the diner, and Brandon returned to his routine as an officer, responding to calls and walking his daily beat. Yet each lunch break, they continued to meet. Only now, Cora sometimes treated him with a meal she'd cooked herself. She proudly read new menus and tested new recipes, ever thankful for the gift of literacy that Brandon had helped her obtain. Every once in a while, new faces joined them. A young man who'd lost his home came to ask how Cora had turned her life around. A woman fresh from a shelter asked Brandon for advice on courses she could take to improve her reading. The friendship between officer and former homeless woman served as a beacon for many, proof that a single act of compassion could spiral into real change. Months passed, and one day, Cora mentioned an idea. She wanted to volunteer as a reading tutor for adults at the local library. Brandon's eyes lit up. He realized she had taken their story full circle. What once was her hidden struggle had transformed into a gift she could offer others. He and Cora made the plan together, coordinating with library staff. Soon enough, he started teaching other adults and teens to read, just as Brandon had taught her. In those library sessions, people saw hope reflected in Cora's gentle smile. Whenever she opened a book or helped someone puzzle out words, she remembered the policeman who first offered her lunch that day that it changed her life. Brandon continued stopping by, checking in, sharing a quiet lunch now and then, no longer out of sympathy but out of true friendship. That was the real something shocking no one had expected. That simple shared meals and reading lessons would blossom into a lasting bond, reshaping an entire neighborhood's perception of how an officer could serve and how a homeless woman could become a teacher. Cora and Brandon's story, told by word of mouth across Riverton, reminded everyone that small acts of kindness can ripple outward in life-changing ways. And every time the two friends looked at each other, they remembered that a little compassion served day by day can transform the hardest streets into a place of second chances and genuine human connection. This story highlights the transformative impact of empathy, small acts of kindness, and the willingness to see another person's potential rather than their struggles. Officer Brandon initially offered to share his lunch because he disliked eating alone, but that simple gesture grew into a genuine friendship. As he sat with Cora, a homeless woman, he discovered her hidden barriers, especially her limited reading skills. Instead of judgment, he responded with compassion and practical support. Over time, his help equipped her with the ability to read, boosting her confidence and unlocking new opportunities. By demonstrating steadfast concern, Officer Brandon turned what could have been a routine encounter into a life-altering journey. His actions remind us that genuine human connection can reshape someone's future. Meanwhile, Cora's willingness to accept assistance and her determination to learn proved that self-improvement is achievable even in the toughest circumstances. Their story shows how society benefits when those in positions of trust extend compassion beyond their official duties. Yet it also raises complex questions about resources, responsibilities, and biases. Some doubted Brandon's intentions, while others overlooked Cora's potential because of her homeless status. Their story underscores the need for ongoing community support, respect, and understanding. Now, for you, if you were in Officer Brandon's shoes, how far would you go to help someone in need, even if it meant facing criticism or stepping outside your comfort zone? Let us know your thoughts below.